Welcome everybody. Make sure I have the sound down. And welcome to week 3 in Cardi KAL. This is our new 2021 knit along online every Friday at 3 p.m. for those of you who have just joined or tuned in for the first time. This is an adventure in cardigan knitting. We offered 3 choices: a beginner pattern called Olive Basket, very simple knitting with some knits and purls for texture, and then stocking stitch for the main part of the cardigan. The body is knit in one piece up to the underarms, and then you finish each front separately, the back separately. The borders are knit in, so there's no picking up of stitches, and then the sleeves are knit separately and seamed afterwards. And then option number 2 was the intermediate level, and this is a top-down cardigan with lace and textural stitches, no cables, and it incorporates directional increases but no seams. And then option number 3 is the advanced level, and that one is called Blended Woods Cardigan. I'll make sure I put all 3 links in the comments below if you're interested to look at the pattern a little more closely on Ravelry. So Blended Woods Cardigan is using multiple cable techniques, and it is seamed. Side seams, shoulder seams, and underarm sleeve seams, and set-in sleeves. And the yarn of choice is the Echo Tweed DK, which is a beautiful blend of organic wool, alpaca, and lyocell, little tweed flecks. I'll just bring a skein closer to the camera so you can see it. DK weight, so generally 22 stitches and 28 rows makes up a DK tension. DK, or we call it double knitting, that's just referring to the weight of the yarn. It doesn't mean that you're knitting with 2 strands together. Some people ask that question. Okay. Hi Karen, thanks for joining us. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to show you my progress on option number 3, the Blended Woods Cardigan. And we have another whip in progress here for the Cardi KAL, so I'm going to show you that one too. That's option number 2, so you get to see both of them. And then I think I'll go through a little bit of the techniques and try to demonstrate some of the parts that you might be getting to shortly. You might have already got to those parts and had questions. And I also want to welcome our new knit-alongers this week. We have, joining us since last Friday, we have Cindy W, Ann H, Noella L, and as of 2:30 today, we have a brand new knit-alonger, and that is Linda L. So thanks so much for joining, and I hope you learn a few new techniques over the following weeks. If you're looking for the previous videos, 1 and 2, week 1 and 2, you'll find them in the events page under Cardi KAL, and they're also in our videos section. And if you look in the events page, you'll also see some of the progress pics posted in the last week or 2 from our knit-alongers, and it's nice to see the different colors knit up, just to get an idea if you're thinking of making something for yourself in one of those colors. And it's great to cheer on your fellow knitters as well. So this week we've been doing curbside pickups. It's been going well. I set up a red table outside, and sometimes it's covered in snow, but that doesn't keep the knitters away. And I have a basket which I slide down the table with the yarn in it, and then they slide it back to me after they take their yarn out. So I have been wondering why yarn stores are not considered essential. I think they should be essential because it is a form of mind and body therapy for all of us. And it does keep us at home, and we're feeling productive and creative at the same time and relaxed. So anybody want to chime in? Do you think yarn shop should be considered essential? Hi Kathy. Hi Hetty. Hetty posted a picture of her cardigan. She is doing option number 1 in the beautiful golden mustard, which I'm sold out of now, but I can show you how pretty it is. Little flecks of teal and orangey red, and I think a dark blue fleck too. So how is everybody doing? Do you find that the month of January is moving along quickly for you, or is it going by slowly? Hi Cindy. Yes, I agree. This should be an essential service. And hopefully we'll be able to get back to in-store shopping in February or at the latest March. We just all have to be safe and follow the rules. Okay, so let's start with option number 1. I have to get organized. So really the only notes I want to give you this week about option number 1 are, you might notice that the decreases are worked 1 stitch in from the edge. Not all patterns are written that way. Some ask you to do the decreases at the very beginning. This one has an extra little touch to it to keep the edges very neat and to make it easier for you to seam the garment after. It will ask you to knit 1 stitch and then do your decrease, either knit 2 together or SKP or SSK, and that will happen around the underarms and the sleeve cap. So if you're wondering why that is done in some patterns and not all the patterns, it's really just individual to the designer and her techniques, maybe the way that she's learned years ago, and she wants to stay more specific to that. So that is a very good feature on the olive basket cardigan. It's also something that you can employ on any of your knitting projects if you prefer to have your decreases in from the edge and not have that sort of rough, jagged edge which you get when you're slipping a stitch over immediately or knitting 2 together at either end. And then the notes for Mary Shen, option number 2 for this week, because I think you're all either at the underarm division or heading towards it. So some of you might not be familiar with the backwards loop cast on method. That is used to add extra stitches for the neckline at the top of the cardigan, and also when you divide for the underarm, you'll be creating an underarm seam where you'll be picking up stitches when you start the sleeve. Not right away. You'll finish the body first and cast off at the ribbing, and then you go back to your sleeve stitches, which are on a holder, and then you'll have to pick up some stitches at the underarm. So the backwards loop method is used when we are in the middle of our knitting and we can't start from scratch with 2 ends of yarn. So you only have the working yarn attached to your ball of yarn. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the camera and just demonstrate it. And then you can see the back of my cardigan too. Okay, so I have come up the back. I finished all my A-line shaping, so you can see that the purl stitches are getting fewer and fewer in between the cables. And then I have shaped the underarm. These underarm shapings were very smooth too. They had me do a slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over right at the outside edge, so it gets rid of the jagged corners. And now I'm up to the shoulder and neck shaping on the back. I've just cast off the back neck here at the top of the cable. So I had to say goodbye to that beautiful zigzag cable and the OXO cable. That's the circular one in the middle. But I'm still working on the honeycomb cable, which is the side texture panels. Okay, so we'll pretend that we are on option number 2. And we are at the underarm of the cardigan. So as you can see, I've only got my working yarn attached, so I can't do the traditional long tail cast on. So the pattern is calling for me to do a backwards loop cast on. So I use my left thumb, I position it behind the working yarn, and when you look at it, it does make a backwards loop, or to some people it looks like the letter E. And then all I'm doing is slipping the loop onto the needle. It doesn't feel like there's much strength in it, but once you knit across those stitches, they become very strong. So again, I put my thumb behind the strand of yarn, under, and then come around on top of it. And then my needle is going under the loop, just like you would with the long tail cast on, using the thumb loop. Okay, so you'll have to do, according to your size, you'll have to do quite a few of those, and that will give a little spacer across the underarm and connect to the other side of the body. So backwards loop cast on. You'll see it in quite a few patterns as well. Oh, and I did want to show you one skein, 100-gram skein, just how far it goes in your knitting. You'll find that on option 1 and 2, one skein goes a lot farther, but when you're working in all the cables, they take up more yarn. So this is one skein here. I'm already halfway through the underarm, and that's where I had to join the second skein. So that is great yardage for this particular yarn. So the notes we have for cardigan option number 3, I think, yes, okay. I think I mentioned last week that if you don't want to sew your shoulders for option number 3, which is requested in the pattern, casting off shoulder shapings, and then fronts and back shoulders are matched up and sewn together. If you don't want to do that option, you can improvise and do the same procedure that is done on option number 1, which is short rows instead of casting off the shoulder shaping. I'm going to demo it, and then you can leave all your shoulder stitches on the needles and then do the 3 needle bind off. That saves time. It will match up your stitches nice and neat. It gives a bit more stretch and less of a bulky seam. So there are lots of advantages if you choose to do that. I'm just going to catch up with the comments and then I will give you a quick demo. Hi Elizabeth. Yes, mental health, very important, essential. Nancy agrees. Oh yeah, you're all with me. Essential service. Hi Rhonda. The green cardigan, it's a lovely cardigan. That one is called Margarita, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry. I will put the link in the comments after so you can have a look at it. And it is knit with a cotton merino, 4 skeins for small to medium, 100 grams. And it is an Aran weight. And Kathy likes the black bag on the right that is holding my yarn. Yes, these are for sale, Kathy. This is our special compartment storage organizer. It has 19 sections in it. There's a Velcro pouch that comes out of the center if you want to take that separately. And then there's all sorts of outside pockets, zippered, and it's a heavy, heavy wool felt in a charcoal, so it doesn't show the dirt. It's pretty well water resistant and just stands up on its own. Doesn't need any weight in it. So yes, I'm going to show you the short row method. Okay, so there are different ways of doing your short rows. The more popular method in the last 5 years or so is the German short row method. And that's the one I'm going to show you just because it's very simple. And once you do it, it just becomes like a mechanical motion that you can repeat without thinking. So what I've done here, I followed my pattern as written. I have worked across to the center stitches. I've cast them off. But my pattern does tell me to finish the row and then on the wrong side row to cast off, for my size, 6 stitches at the beginning. So that would be my first shoulder shaping. But instead of casting them off, I'm working only until the last 6 stitches. We're pretending that there are 6. I'm not going to finish the row, and then I'm going to turn my work. And the reason that we have to do short row shaping technique in our knitting is so that when we turn the work and start working back, we're not leaving a hole here or a gap, because that would not fill in as you get further up in the knitting or if you're trying to join the shoulders. So to do the short row shaping, I am going to bring my yarn to the front as if I'm purling, and I'm going to slip the first stitch purlways onto the right needle. I'm not going to knit it, I'm not going to purl it. And as I slip it, I'm just tightening up the yarn at the back. So I'm actually strangling the stitch, and you can see that my one stitch has now been pulled and distorted into 2 little bars. That's the look you want. It doesn't mean that you have 2 stitches, it just means you've pulled the stitch and you've tightened it up. And then I simply go back in my pattern, which is purl 2, knit 2, back to the neck opening, which has already been shaped. And then I would turn around and I would do the same thing again. On the right side row, I would work across in my pattern to the required number of stitches for shoulder shaping number 2. So I think it's 6 stitches again. So you can easily see this was the first shoulder shaping. So I have to leave 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, maybe I'll do one more to give you the proper visuals. Okay, so the stitch that looks like 2 bars, I'm counting as 1 stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would work across my right side row till I'm 6 stitches plus 6 stitches from the end. And then I would simply turn my work, and then I would do another short row shaping, which is yarn in the front, slip the first stitch purlways, pull the yarn over to the back, and then continue in my pattern. That way you're collecting all your shoulder stitches on one needle. You're not casting them off. This is only if you decide to do the 3 needle bind off method. So that is something that you can do on option number 1, as written. They tell you how to do the short row shapings. If you prefer, you can do the German short row. It's up to you. Both ways are very, very good at hiding any little holes or gaps. The short row method I'm showing is the German one, and it's just a little quicker, less fiddly. You don't have to move the yarn, slip, move the yarn, turn, slip, move the yarn. So instead of doing 5 steps, you do 2 steps. And then we would collect all our shoulder shaping stitches on the opposite front shoulder. So we have a few more to finish on this side. and then we'll have to reattach the yarn and work the stitches in the same manner on this side. And then all the stitches will be on one needle, and then I'd have to finish my fronts same way, do the shoulder shaping with the short row technique. And then what I would do is hold the two fronts together with the back. And I'm going to show you how to do the 3 needle bind off. It's a great technique that you can do on any pullover or cardigan that has shoulder seams. The easiest would be, of course, if there are no shoulder shaping and they're just asking you to cast off all your stitches at one time. Then you would just leave those on stitch holders. And then when you've got the back and front, you put always the right sides facing each other. So this is worked on the wrong side of your work. And you do need a 3rd needle. So I have just a straight needle for my 3rd needle. It can be close to the same size or the same size. So we'll pretend that I have my back shoulder stitches here and my front shoulder stitches here. Boy, I've knit this up so quick. So what we're doing, even though there is a pattern here, we're always knitting the stitches together, never purling. So I'm just going to knit the first stitch on the front needle together with the first stitch on the back needle. So I've pushed my needle through both, and then I'm bringing the yarn back through both stitches together. Make sure you slide those off. So we've created one cast off stitch. Now we have to create another cast off stitch. So I'm knitting one stitch at the front, one stitch at the back together. Slip those off. And then use whatever needle is more convenient for you. I think my front needle is the most convenient. So I'm going to cast off stitch number 1 over stitch number 2. And then again I knit 2 together, one at the front, one at the back. It's really a great way of matching up cable patterns and textured patterns. Well, I'm going to use my back needle now, and I'm slipping stitch number 2 over stitch number 3. And try to do this technique a little looser than your normal casting off or your normal knitting. You really don't want the shoulders to be pulled in and puckered. You want them to have a little bit of stretch and ease. So I'm loosening up my stitch each time I cast off. I'm going to try one more, and then maybe I can show you what it would look like. And don't worry, I can undo all this sample knitting and get back to my shoulder shaping. Okay, so we would do that right across to the end of the shoulder stitches, and then hopefully you have some yarn attached on the opposite shoulder to work with, or you can attach a new end. So we'll see if there is a way of showing you. Okay, so from here to here is the shoulder worked in the 3 needle bind off or cast off. So it's very, very flat. There's no ridge there. It would match up the patterns. And on the inside you get the tiniest little bit of a ridge and some nice stretch. So I hope you give that technique a try. Has anyone done the 3 needle cast off in project number 1, or maybe on another cardigan or pullover? Hetty will be able to do it on hers. She's doing number 1. Yeah, so it is something worth learning, practicing, maybe with some sample squares together that are not cast off, and see if it's something that you might use. So now I'm going to show you what's in the bag. I was lucky enough to borrow this from one of our knit-alongers, just to show you the color knit up and option number 2, Mary Shen cardigan. I'm going to bring it up to the camera and then you'll get a better idea of the steps involved in knitting the top down. Okay, so this is the beautiful olive green color. And this is the left front. So you can see the border pattern, the lace work is taking shape nicely. And the little side faux cable. No cable needle is used here, it just looks like it has a twist in it. And then the double seed stitch. It really shows up nicely in a tweed yarn. And then you can see the raglan shaping is showing up. That's the directional increases that are formed. And the back has, this was an option for any of you who wanted to put in a center panel down the back, just to give more interest while you're knitting. And over here we have the right front. So when it's blocked out, everything will be quite evident. All that cable work, all that lace work will be quite evident, and the texture. So what has happened here, because it's knit top down, the original number of stitches were cast on, but the round neck shaping had to start from nothing. So there had to be increased stitches, and then what I was just showing you was the backward loop cast on. So that was worked from here to here to get the right number of stitches to fill in the front on both sides. So this is what's going to happen at your underarm section when you divide and you continue down on the body and leave your sleeve stitches on holders. You'll have to do the backwards loop method to create a straight line of stitches there. So when you're picking up your stitches in the backwards loop method to begin your sleeve section, there is a right way of doing it. When you look at the backwards loop, you're just seeing a single loop, but you really want to pick up the double loop. That will make it stronger, less holy, and reinforce it. So I'm going to show you, as if this is the underarm, how to pick up your stitches. So there you can see this backwards loop method does create a loose edge, but that is always okay because there is always an edge or continuation of knitting. Okay, so when you're looking at the stitches, you can see there is a top bar. These are the top bars. You want to get in to where there's a bit of a post where the two bars crisscross. So when I'm going into the post where the two bars crisscross, I'm actually under two bars, so that gives it strength. Then I would bring my yarn around and work it through. So I'm picking up one stitch for every stitch. And then I'm going to skip this big open bar because you can see what's happening. If I pick it up, it's just creating a massive hole there. So let go of that one. And we're looking for where the two bars intersect. So it's just over to the left, and see how nicely that closes in that big stitch or loop. So again, we're not going under here, we're going one over. If it feels difficult to get into with your needle, then you know you're in the right stitch. Okay, so that's 3 stitches picked up in 3 backwards loop cast on stitches. So that's what you're going to be aiming for at the underarm, and then also when we do the collar, which is picked up in knit at the very end. Front borders and the collar. Okay, so I think that was all the demos I wanted to show you. So the backwards loop cast on, picking up stitches, pretending this was the underarm, German short row shaping, which you can do for your shoulders if you want to do the 3 needle bind off. So that's 4 demos. I don't want to overload you with any more. Next week we'll go over more of the finishing, picking up stitches for the borders. I think we have to pick up stitches on option number 3 and option number 2. Again, option number 1, they're all built in for you, so you get a break there. And Hetty is not there yet at the shoulders, no. It takes a long time because this is a very fine yarn for winter knitting. It's a great weight for wearing indoors or outdoors in the spring and the fall, but it is finer and the needles are smaller. As you can see, I'm on a 3.75, so it's going to take time and patience, and that's what we have a lot of these days. Time and patience. And right now it's starting to snow again outside, so if you're in an area that has a lot of snow, it just feels extra nice to be sitting indoors and feeling cozy and warm and have that nice, quiet, peaceful feeling of the snow falling outside. So I think we'll move on to our trivia now. So we've got the prize over here, which I showed you last week. That will be the prize for the live draw in the 5th week. So we're in week 3. Next week will be week 4, where we try to work on the finishing aspects. And then the final week, I will have the ballot box, which is buried under here, and we will find out who the winner is. So everybody who has joined up for the knit along and purchased the yarn has a ballot in the ballot box, and then each week we're doing an incentive ballot, which is a random name chosen from those of you who are watching. Hi Mary. Oh, you like my scarf, thank you. I will post the link to this one too. This is a shawl knit with Richard DeVries hand-dyed Pepino Merino, and it's actually like when you're knitting it, you're taking a road trip across Canada from the west coast to the east coast. So each pattern represents a different area of Canada, a different province. So yes, where was I? So yes, we have the draw, and so anyone who wins the trivia question, that's a random winner. Each week we'll have a second ballot that goes into the ballot box. So that gives you added chances to win. So tweed yarn, if you're not familiar with it, is spun with 2 plies. So there's actually 2 very, very soft spins that are twisted against each other. That's what creates the strength in the yarn without losing the loft or the softness. Generally, in the old days, it was always spun with very coarse sheep wool, and luckily nowadays we have options of tweed yarns that are mixed with cashmere, silk. This one has alpaca, lyocell, those are luxury newer fibers, and that's created a much softer handle and added to the popularity of it. Now, how they create the little tweed bits, they actually have what they call roving, and roving is just the pure wool before it's spun into yarn. So it looks like a mass of candy floss, but in different colors. And in their spinning process, they have all the different color rovings, but they have just little bits that they pull off, and they let those little bits at random be spun into the yarn for its final spinning process, and that creates those pretty highlights that you're seeing They look like they're really just sitting on top of the yarn, but they're held in quite well. I mean, you could go through a skein of yarn and pull out all the tweed bits, but who would? I mean, that's the highlight of the yarn. And as you're working with the yarn and knitting with it, it's only strengthening the little flecks, so they get even more spun and twisted into the fabric. So that is what they use to make tweed bits, the little flecks. And there's a cute story. I was researching where the word tweed came from, and it actually comes from Scotland, where tweed was first manufactured. So around 1830, a Scottish cloth manufacturer was sending new samples of his tweed cloth to a London merchant, and he put the word tweel, because there was no tweed name yet, so he put the word tweel, T-W-E-E-L, on the invoice. And in Scotland, tweel is another word for twill. But the London cloth merchant misread the invoice, and he thought it said tweed. He thought the L was a D, and so he started advertising new tweed cloth and fabric in stock. And that is how it came to be. So for our trivia question, which is based on the word tweed, whoever comes up with the right answer, please post it in the comments, and we'll just pick a random winner. It doesn't go by who is the quickest on your keyboard. Which prince made tweed popular with Royal Society after designing his own unique tweed pattern? So everybody will know. We just want the prince's name, and you can Google it if you want. He was designing his castle, and he used a specific pattern in the tweed woven cloth, and that sort of caught on with the rest of the royal family, and it's gone through the decades and generations now. So we need the first name of that prince to win an incentive ballot. And in the meantime, I was going to ask you a question. If you know how many whips you have. So whips are works in progress. This is a whip, W-I-P. How many whips you have? Do you keep track of them? Or are you the type of knitter who'd rather leave them in a closet somewhere and pretend they don't exist? And the reason I was thinking of that question is because one of our knitters, I don't think she watches today, but she is a really, really good knitter. She does test knitting for different designers. She hosts a knitting club in non-COVID times, just a little bit south of here. And she brings her knitting group up here when the store is open. Anyway, so last year she decided to tackle all her whip projects and journal it. So what she did is dig through closets and drawers and boxes and under the couch, and she gathered all her whips together, and she listed them all, and then she went through the entire year 2020 and documented finishing each one. And at the end of the year, she wrote a really nice blog post, which she has sent to me, and she finished 52 whips in 1 year. So that would include sweaters, shawls, cardigans, socks, hats, small whips too. So 52 whips she had in her belongings, and not only did she feel that sense of accomplishment in completing them all, but she also discovered she had over 60 sets of needles that she had no idea she had, because for every whip you've got at least one set of needles, circular or straight needles, hiding in it in a project bag. So can you imagine discovering over 60 sets of needles? So she'll never run out of needles in the future. So I thought that was kind of fun. I personally only have 2 whips, one that may never get finished, and this Blended Woods Cardigan, which I know I will finish because I'm really enjoying the cables that much. I think most of us say about 3 whips is their limit, or they can't sleep well at night. Just makes you feel a bit uneasy having things that you know, are feeling forgotten and lonely. Okay, so we have an answer. Oh, we have a few answers. Great. That's great. You knit-alongers are really quick to the draw. Yeah, it's very impressive to finish 52 in a year. I don't think I would have the shoulder or neck strength to do that. That's almost 1 per week. Karen has 5 on the go. That's pretty good. Yeah, it's nice to have a very simple project to work on if you're watching something that's very intense on TV, or if somebody is having a conversation with you, it's good to have maybe a simple sock or hat to pull out and work on. And then when you need the real quiet thinking time, you can work on a top-down project or the cables. Oh, quite a few of you have more than 3. I'm surprised. Yes, that's very true, Wendy. We usually have quite a few dancing in our heads to think of when we finish the ones that are on our needles. So those are called our dream whips. Yeah, so that might be fun to document for this year. I mean, it's still early in the year. We're only into our 3rd week of January. It'd be fun to document, keep a journal instead of, you know, what am I doing each day? Progress on your whips. You could put in all the information, who you're knitting it for, sizing, and that's a good record too, because if you're knitting for friends or relatives, that gives you a keepsake of their sizes, and if you're knitting something in the future for them, it's all documented in your book or your notes. So I will end this here. I don't want to go on too long and take up all your knitting time. So I will post the links down below for anything that I have shown you today that has a pattern link, and we'll be back next Friday at 3 p.m. to go over some of the finishing techniques and demos, and maybe we'll have some more knit-alongers joining us this week. You never know. And continue to post your progress pics in the events page, because I know that's really inspiring other knitters. They may not be ready to tackle one of these cardigans now, but they'll keep it in their dream whip section in their mind for later on in the year. You never know. It's all about inspiring others, right? Enjoy your weekend.